So, can you all hear me? Just the okay, thumbs up? Okay, great. So, a warm welcome to all of you to this month's digital session of Coffee with the Curator. Here we are already to the month of June. I hope you've all been keeping well and enjoying some of these warmer days. For those of you who might not know me, I'm the programming curatorial assistant here at RiverBrink Art Museum, and I'm very glad that you've joined. We're going to keep things light today as we move through this brief tour. This exhibition is currently installed in the second floor northeast bedroom and was originally planned to open to the public early to mid-March. So this is exciting to have a chance to share some of the works. The exhibition is inspired quite simply by plants. And this includes the houseplants that we welcome into our homes, whether they may know their fate or not, the gardening that we enjoy and miss, the colors that we long for during the long, cold, dreary days of February and March here in Canada, and the verdant and leafy greenery that we come to hope and wait and watch for as spring arrives and as summer takes hold. I'd like to start this curatorial talk with some overall views of the space, including some encompassing vantage points and groupings within the exhibition, before getting into a little bit deeper exploration of some of the key works and artists. Here we have two views of the exhibition, one from the top landing looking into the northeast bedroom to the left, and the first grouping of works along the west wall on the right. Botanicals, as an exhibition title, encompasses broadly all that concerns plants, involving or relating to plants and the study of them from both leisure and technical perspectives. This is because the exhibition offers an opportunity to bring together and look at a collection of works from the Samuel E. Weir collection that might not necessarily have the opportunity to be shown together through the same narrative as relating to plants. Some of these works have been shown before in past exhibitions, but a few of these works have never been shown or exhibited before now. So this is an exciting time for us and these works, I hope, who are having their moment in the sun, if you will. This collection-based exhibition includes depictions of botanicals and plants and florals by different artists. And more specifically, this exhibition showcases 10 works and 2 books from the Samuel E. Weir collection and library. But it offers a nice sense of variety in the scope of artists, medium, and representations, all of which can be appreciated. The assembled works highlight the important and the layered relationship that we as humans have with the natural world. Representations of flora bring attention to plants, attention to the environment, and broader conservation concerns through the detailed representation of the form, of the color, and the detail of plant life. This exhibition includes paintings, lithographs, silk screens, and a few books, one rare, of flowers and plants by various artists. The botanical and still life work in this exhibition highlights the role that art plays in the historical and technical study of plants, while also conveying the essence of plant form. This representation, study, and documentation of plants and plant life has a very long history in art and, of course, within other disciplines, such as botany, horticulture, plant biology, and even medicine. But for the sake of time and to contextualize this exhibition, let's briefly explore, in the virtual sense, what awaits you and a possible visit, should that be available to you, when RiverBrink reopens sometime in the near future. Here we have a view of the north wall groupings of works left and the east wall grouping on the right. Please also note that these photos here don't capture two of the wonderful books of floral engravings and wildflower chromolithographs, both of which also come from the Samuel E. Weir Library. Some of the works represent the more traditional still life genre, focusing on inanimate subject matter, with bouquets or vases of flowers as one of the more popular subjects of this genre, such as the center work in the left image, which acts as a sort of focal element that it captures the eye, perhaps even before entering the room. Other works, however, depict the varied experiences that one can expect to find in nature and their surroundings, from the flower vase on our kitchen table to the natural settings represented as wilder, more atmospheric, perhaps idyllic in the landscape. And to keep things fun and light and really in the spirit of looking, I'll invite you as we take this brief tour to keep in mind what is your relationship to plants, whether leisure and pleasure through hobby and appreciation, as an artist perhaps enjoying capturing them in the form of a still life or outdoors on plein air, perhaps as a study or scholarship in the many realms or disciplines related to plants, or perhaps through growing and gardening and all that plants and plant life offers us there meditatively. And following this talk, should there be some time, feel free to share some of what this reflection may conjure up. We know that we do turn to a variety of plants as mood boosters, or to share thoughtful respect, celebrating both the big and small moments in life, as well as honoring the happy and sad. Plants offer us a sense of fascination, providing an opportunity for reflection with their ability to capture and hold our attention. The first work we're going to look at here is a lino cut that's titled Bottle Gentian from 1960 by the artist Anne Smith Hook. Originally born in Ireland in 1900, immigrated to Canada by 1922. Largely self-taught, she also studied under Kevin Atkins in the 1940s and at the Ontario College of Art under Carl Schaefer. She became a full member of the Federation of Canadian Artists in 1944 and the Canadian Painter Etchers in 1952. Hook rarely numbered her original prints in specific editions, but almost all of her prints, however, were printed by the artist herself in smaller editions of 30 or less. Today, the work of Hook is included in such public collections as the Windsor Art Gallery, the Hart House Collection, University of Toronto, the Edmonton Art Gallery, the University of Maine, and Melbourne Museum in Australia. As a creative artist, Anne Smith Hook was a tireless experimenter, as this work definitely suggests, with this almost labyrinth-like line work and intricate depiction of this sort of tight, entangled nature of the plant in this grouped setting. It offers rhythmic and dynamic pattern. However, the work still maintains a focal point at the center left portion of the piece, where the overarching background forms create a much needed restful break for the eye, I should say, the eye to land. And Hook would work with equal success in block printing, serigraphy, woodcutting, etching, and watercolor. And during the 1950s decade, her reputation was based largely upon her botanical and floral depictions, which emphasized strong design elements. By the 1960s, her work had turned increasingly towards more of a personal form of lyrical abstraction. And some of the key elements of her botanical art are based upon the themes of rebirth and generation. A fun little note about the plant itself: bottle gentian, a rare flower known since 180 BC as Gentiana andrewsi, widely used for its healing qualities, which are still part of modern medicine. But the bottle gentian is a slow-growing but a long-lived plant that requires little care once established, and bumblebees are the main pollinators because they're the only insects that are really strong enough to pry open the closed flowers, some of which we can see within the work more tightly budded. Just a detail here as we look a little closer. At a technical level, we find lots of dynamic movement that demands your attention as the eye weaves through the background lines while stems rise up here in the foreground. And this is a warm scale print with delicate shades of ochre, sienna, yellows, warm greens, an ensemble over which a single blue block representing the flower within this lino cut comes to stand out with a powerful intensity. And it's certainly a strong testament to Hooke's technical ability and mastery of the medium and process of the lino cut. Another work in the exhibition, here we have a silkscreen work titled Fallen Logs, Trilliums by Ella M. Waukee. Not much on record of Waukee's background other than her known roots in Cape Crocker, Ontario on the Bruce Peninsula, where she proudly served her community and possessed a varied and wide-ranging skill set from costume design, writer, poet, and as we see here, silk screening. Her writing also includes a book titled Bare Facts, which contained numerous short stories and teachings based upon her strong spiritual beliefs and experiences from nature. This work here, Fallen Logs, is rich in color with a variety of greens and layered leafy patterns that warrant a closer look. This overall picture does not do the work justice, but I have tried to capture her ability here through the image and her ability to create this sort of overlap and layering with a closer look here in a detail. We see this sort of layered vibrant pops of pink and white, with the white representing trilliums. And this work, very much like the previous Hooke's bottle gentian, is more of a testament to an experimental process while playing with and exploring printmaking at a print studio in Cape Crocker early on in her career. Waukee not only conveys pattern in recognizable form, referring to the crisp print-like depictions of leaf and tree form, but the added layering of greens against this increasingly darker background to offer us a sense of depth through this silkscreen medium. Here we have a watercolor over pencil work by artist Paul Alfred titled Scrub Maple from 1928. Paul Alfred Ernest Meister immigrated to Canada in 1910 from England, and his works have been exhibited extensively throughout Europe and North America, including the British Empire exhibition at Wembley, the first Pan-American exhibition in Los Angeles, and the Exposition d'Art Canadien Musée des Jeux de Paume in Paris, France. Alfred also worked extensively as an illustrator, a graphic designer, and a printmaker, working on tourist and other publications for the Department of Canadian National Resources. His work, Scrub Maple, however, represents his strength as a landscape painter, particularly in the watercolor medium, where he was a founding member of the Canadian Society of Painters in Watercolor in the 1920s. Also in the 1920s, he would serve as an instructor in watercolor painting at the Ottawa Art Association School and was a member of a group of artists called the Ottawa Group, which included Harold Beament, Frank Hennessy, Florence McGovery and David Milne. As the title here of the work suggests, it depicts a low-lying scene where a maple has grown entangled with grasses and shrub-like greenery. The work is one of more abstract depictions in this exhibition, conveying a sometimes formless or airy nature of tree or plant form. The work does not depict a particularly noteworthy scene in nature, as this appears to be the base of perhaps a larger tree along the edge of what might be a small river. But this is a scene one could easily pass by, perhaps on a casual walk, without much notice. But Alfred, however, takes pause and captures the interplay of color, transparency, and the layering of such moments in nature that do surround us every day. The play of color here sets the form, outline, and depth of the setting, rather than a reliance on a more traditional formal, perhaps progression of trunk, branch, and canopy. Sometimes the most precise and perceptive depictions in and of nature, especially those of plant life and tree life, can be captured through this sense of abstracted play of color and form. Moving on to another work within the exhibition, a work by Daniel Fowler, a watercolor over sepia ink titled Study of a Tree. Fowler, born into an upper middle class family in Camberwell, England, worked as an artist, a journalist, an author, as well as a farmer, who developed a strong familiarity with the work of English landscape painters such as J.M.W. Turner, David Cox, Peter de Wint, John Sell Cotman, and eminent lithographer Charles Joseph Hall Mandel. Fowler was first drawn to painting scenes directly in nature rather than in the studio. And after his father's death in 1830, he would begin to explore his own style of English watercolor painting that drew upon more of a sense of calligraphy or calligraphic skill sets, eventually showing a mastery here of observation and a sureness and economy of means, while retaining great freedom and a directness of stroke that is bold and fresh. Gradually, Fowler reached his maturity, and he did so as an artist in Canada, particularly with his landscape paintings in and around 1875, such as this work here, which fully showcased his free calligraphic style with short, stabbing, repeated brushstrokes that would distinguish him from most other English artists, such as John Herbert Caddy, William Nicol Cresswell Fraser, and Thomas Moore Martin, whose Canadian landscapes continue to reflect the sort of more gentle, muted atmosphere as developed in England. But within this work, if we look closely, we see the artist capturing a great vibrancy of light across what is an otherwise muted set of green and brown ochre tones. And his work here also reflects an intense but gentle realism that comes from a 14-year-long experience as a farmer, deeply connected to the landscape, paired with his strong and skilled foundations from his earlier trainings. A sense of free brushstrokes, expressive and calligraphic, this style really comes to develop in his later landscapes, working directly from nature. Fowler also possesses great attention to detail and sensibility through the application of layers of line work, here highlighting branches, leaves, even blades of grass. And this stands in contrast to, say, Alfred's scrub maple, however, but both artists do equally and successfully convey the essence and structure of the tree form within nature. Moving ahead, another colorful work in the exhibition, we have Robert Holmes' work untitled Yellow Water Lilies, a watercolor and gouache over pencil work. Here's an artist who was influenced early on by the natural beauty of the countryside in the Cannington area located in the Durham region, as well as by his mother's love of flowers and gardening. He studied at the Ontario School of Art, where he would study under William Cruikshank, and then at the Royal College of Art in London in England, and then a brief stint at the University of New York before returning to Toronto. In 1886, he would join a sketch club, which provided him an opportunity to develop outdoor sketching techniques and opportunities to explore the countryside, and this club would become the Toronto Art Students League. As Holmes evolved into a teacher and a mentor to many students, he was known to encourage students to find inspiration in native flowers and shrubs as motifs for decorative design. And in researching Holmes and his work, many sources conveyed his ability to depict flowers in such a way that others might paint a portrait, possessing a rare combination of botanical accuracy, artistic design, and technical skill. His work here is a testament to this description, as his water lilies move between a near-perfect representation and wonderfully saturated, rich, and layered color that nature might even find challenging to produce. We might know and recognize that many artists have explored capturing wildflowers in nature, with the water lily, of course, being one of the more recognizable motifs. But I feel Holmes's iteration here provides something unique in the way in which he addresses this scene, with a blend of a sort of hyper-accuracy with sharp glass-like reflections and a bit of artistic freedom, contrasting the predominantly impressionistic depictions of this type of flower that we may be more familiar with. Member of the group of seven, Arthur Lismer, describes Holmes as his depictions of flowers in nature quite beautifully, and I just thought I'd share that with you. It requires a lifetime of devotion to paint a flower as Robert Holmes did. Many artists paint flowers as big posies and make color arrangements out of their varied hues, but there is something more in a Robert Holmes flower picture. He tracked them with patient affection to their dwelling places, either on the edge of a marsh or in the depths of a wood. His pictures always gave me the impression that we have come upon them unaware and have made a rich discovery. They are real. He has captured their form, color, and setting, informing the mind and opening the eyes to their beauty. A naturalist and artist, but an artist first. Continuing on through this tour, we have a work by Archibald George Barnes entitled Roses and Peonies, an oil on canvas. Born in London, England, Barnes attended the St. John's Wood Art School and the Royal Academy School in London. He became a painter of portraits and figures in a very true and realistic style, and was represented in public galleries throughout England and collections in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, as well as the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. Barnes' primary mediums are oils and watercolors, with his most well-known subjects as portraits and figures in landscapes. However, he was known for combining various genres together, such as a portrait, a landscape, and still life, all in one. His work here is appropriate and timely for our growing season, as peonies are in bloom right now, peak season, in fact. I think just recently, the Toronto Botanical Gardens' most recent announcement indicated that it's almost 300 varieties will be in bloom this very weekend. And even locally at RiverBrink, The roses in the front garden bed have already begun their spring and summer show. The Barnes depicts a traditional colorful still life with romantic tones made up of soft floral hues against a neutral background. And just a little closer look here, we might notice subtle flecks of the brush indicating the high glossy texture of the vessel in which they are situated. And perhaps as a subtle nod to the spirit of vanitas, or the still life genre, the fallen petal. With this flower journeying past its prime, slowly coming to wilt. At first we are attracted by the beauty, flowers arranged and shown in an ideal state of bloom, but only in order to recall the vanities of earthly life, very much fleeting in nature, asking us perhaps to look beyond the superficial interests and recognize life and its cycles. Other works in the collection by this artist include a portrait of RiverBrink's very own Samuel E. Ware. Continuing on here, we have a work, a lino cut by Verna Viola Depew, titled Nicotiana. And she was born near Stony Creek in 1894 and received her artistic training at the Ontario College of Art as well as the Cleveland School of Art. She was a member of the Society of Canadian Painter Etchers and Engravers, the Canadian Society of Graphic Art, and the Women's Art Association. She was both active and recognized in art circles in Hamilton, serving various roles in the Hamilton Art Education System and the Art Gallery Association of Hamilton. Her color linoleum cut for Nicotiana was pulled by hand on fine rice paper, using 7 blocks for this print specifically. In order to produce this work, Depew created several sketches in nature so that a solid outline composition could be established, and then several experiments would follow in order to fit a color scheme into the skeleton drawing before a decision would be made on the final harmony of hues. Inspired by the charm of the fragrant, old-fashioned Nicotiana flowers, the work is comprised of a mix of deep hues and shades with flatter, lighter colors, described as creating almost a fairy tale eeriness of deep light and shade. And then jumping quickly here to a work by Rainey, who was born in London, England, and educated in Toronto at the Bishop Strachan School and Ontario College of Art. She would graduate with a honors in stained glass. This work is titled Poor Man Pennies, and she was also a passionate sculptor and is quoted stating that sculpture was her favorite medium. A bit of background on the way in which this work came into the RiverBrink collection, as well as a few other works within this exhibition, referring specifically to the bottle Gentian and the most recent Nicotiana work by Hook and Depew. Weir collected these works through honorary membership in the Society of Canadian Painter Etchers and Engravers, which is a tradition that dates back to 1929. When the first presentation print or members print was made for distribution to those who were interested in the art of printmaking in Canada. The honorary membership would be open to anyone interested in the print and would entitle the member to an original members print of the year, issued in an edition limited to 75. This was a way to build up one's art collection, and members, many of them, certainly did so through this subscription. But in the spirit of collecting, their practice would be to vary the medium of the print offered each year, so etching, lithography, engraving, wood block, or lino cut, to share prints made by Canadian artists. So this work here by Rainey was the official print of 1965. And in keeping with the breadth of Rainey's various forms and media that she worked with and subject matter, the weed became a central focus for her, and for quite some time. Weeds are often seen by the artist in their symbolic sense as a sort of final end and the beginning, while in the intermediate stage, we know that weeds keep nature balanced and in harmony by supplying birds with seed and so much more, and offer us much work on our hands. But the composition of this work reflects nature's arrangement as seen through the artist's eyes. While giving precedence to an intricacy of line and varied texture, it offers a graphic quality contrasted by a neutral background, which allows the eye to enjoy and meander the intricate details and precise line work upon closer look. A bit difficult to visually identify the weeds or plants within this composition. One of the plants might be, by the look of it, the Lunaria annua, or the annual honest tree, more familiarly known to us as the silver dollar, a rather invasive plant in some areas of the world, and can certainly grow a bit unruly and wild here as well. Finally, we're wrapping up with some final looks at the two books that I chose to include in this exhibition. And the first is by Dutch painter and nurseryman Emanuel Swerts, his book titled Early Floral Engravings, all 110 plates from the 1612 Florilegium. Swerts' illustrations provide a guide to the flowering plants grown in European gardens in 1600 and offer a wealth of interesting engravings of value both for technical information as well as visual exploration. The term Florilegium comes from the New Latin word gathering flowers, and the publication of Florilegia in the 1600s began in response to a number of factors. The first being that during the European aesthetic revolution of the 1600s, plants in general and their fruits and flowers in particular came to be appreciated for their beauty and visual appeal. Prior to this time, plants were valued primarily for their medicinal, culinary, or household uses. And second, the development of trade routes throughout the world made it possible for royal and wealthy patrons to import exotic species of plants, flowers, and many fruits, garnering great interest in the varied structures, compositions, and aesthetic qualities of these new plant forms. Lastly, all these imported beautiful and exotic plants led to the development of a new concept in gardening, the flower garden. Instead of growing a garden of herbal and medicinal plants for practical and personal use, the flower garden is planted solely to display plants for their aesthetic value, offering pleasure and enjoyment. Florilegia, or flower books, were initially books of the cultivated plants in these specific gardens. And this book really offers us an example of how organic forms were transformed into reproducible art and accurate reference pictures and images long before the camera and photography would become involved. And this is a book, should you be able to visit RiverBrink one day, that can be leafed through. And there are several interesting and very detailed images and studies. Finally, we have the second book within the exhibition, a rare book included is the Canadian Wildflowers, created by Agnes Fitzgibbon and Catherine Parr, who proposed a study of local plants in 1861. but found no one willing to take on the cost of publishing for such a small market. She would reach out to her niece, Agnes Fitzgibbon, to provide illustrations for this project. And the signature image of this exhibition, the image on the right, the white Trillium, one of Agnes Fitzgibbon's lithographs, is one of the many fully colored plates that dawn Canadian Wildflowers. This book, published in 1869, would become one of the first serious botanical studies published in Canada. Fitzgibbon and Trial were responsible for enlisting subscribers, which would be a common practice in 19th century Canadian publishing, but their collaboration proved so popular and successful that several editions in several regions across Canada were produced. And so finally, for some closing remarks. We know that there are so many ways that plants and plant life are represented and captured. Our appreciation of these works and others like them can continue to grow, much like the beautiful plant form and flowers do. And it is certainly inspiring to see how artists interpret the world around them, around us, editing it as their creativity and vision allows, creating new spaces and worlds for us to enjoy and learn from. Sometimes just highlighting the things that maybe go unnoticed, the things that become so common that they disappear into the backgrounds of our lives, or the colors and nuances of nature that go unseen. The things that invite us to linger, ponder, and reflect. And as we wrap up our talk here on plants, a good time as any to remember that though unmoving and still to the naked eye, a plant's slow and steady growth narrates its life each time. Its stems perk up with an intake of water, and its leaves unfurl and bend towards the sunlight. We too grow and have grown slowly and steadily in similar ways, despite having these days remained for quite some time in our careful and in our quiet quarantines and isolation. I hope, if anything, this talk offers you a moment to pause, a brief wander perhaps through nature, through a garden, an inspiration to take a moment, maybe today, maybe this weekend, or sometime soon, to tune in to nature. And then I guess we have a few moments. If you reflected on your relationship to plants and plant life and nature, if anything within your reflections has been conjured up, we can maybe have a moment to share them. But I do just quickly want to say thank you to RiverBrink Administrator Rihanna for very smoothly taking care of all the needs that go into organizing these Zoom chats behind the scenes. And a thank you to all for joining today. I'm not sure if everyone's unmuted here, if they have anything they'd like to share about plants and why they love plants or what it makes you think of.
I've unmuted myself. So a comment I would like to make is, as a rank beginner painter, I've decided to take this up during COVID. I look at the work here and I am just in awe of the detail. and the imaginations or the ability to look at nature and transfer it onto a material to do this painting. I'm just in awe of the talent of these people.
That's great that you've chosen to take a nap. Have you been exploring your own personal gardens or?
Oh, for myself, let me just say, yes, I have actually. And I was out looking at my ground roses this morning, and I thought, oh my God, could I take on something like that? And I have some beautiful big blue delphiniums that are just blossoming, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I could try that. But of course, I want it to be perfect, so I'm not so sure. But these are lovely. These are lovely. And may I just say, Rihanna, thank you so much for getting me in at like 2 minutes before the hour when I couldn't find the link.
No.
Thanks. That's great. And I hope you enjoy, continuing to explore and interpret your world around you in the ways that these artists have with plant and plant life.
Denise, you're unmuted if you'd like to go ahead.
I'm wondering if you could bring up the image again of the Wildflowers, the rare book, Canadian Wildflowers by Agnes and Catherine Parr. Is that part of your permanent collection?
So this is a book within both of the books, yes, are part of the Samuel E. Weir collection, this one being a rare book.
They're incredible.
Yeah, and they're lovely and vibrant. And I just should note too, although a rare book, this one is behind glass in a cabinet, opened up to this particular image, but the rare books within the collection, we always welcome research appointments and visits to come and look at.
I'll remember that post-COVID for sure. I read a biography of Catherine Parr, who's related somehow to Susanna Moody, and I can't remember exactly how. I think they were sisters. And Charlotte Gray wrote an amazing book about her and her work as a botanist and an artist during her time as a pioneering woman in what we now know as Canada. And it was just unbelievable, the effort, the time, the hardships of just living day to day after immigrating from the UK, but then developing the tools and the capacity to, their botanicals were unbelievable. So it's such a treasure. I'm thrilled that that is part of the collection. Totally thrilled.
That's great. Well, we will happily welcome you once we open for a visit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, it's a wonderful book and great that you have an original edition. It has been reprinted several times, and I believe I have a more recent copy of it, which I'm absolutely delighted to have and refer to it quite frequently.
Nice.
Hi, I just want to jump in and say hello and thank you, Sonya, for such a great presentation.
Hi.
There were some familiar pieces, and then there was a few others that were new to me. So it was really beautiful to see. And as a avid gardener and kind of plant mom of interior plants, it was really nice to see. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for joining, Diane. And I wish you much success with your gardening and your houseplants.
Honestly, if I could, I would like quit my life and just open up a flower farm. That's what I would like to do if I could reevaluate things.
Well, I hope you can find time to incorporate it in the life that you lead now. But thanks for joining. Okay. I don't know if that might be all. I'm just looking at my screens, but
I have a question about the Weir collection. Were botanicals an avid theme that he liked to collect, or were these pieces a few that kind of happened into the collection?
I think botanicals as a specific focus might it's just more of an overarching how a few works came in, like you say, to the collection. I'm not sure. I don't want to answer that incorrectly, but I don't know that botanicals specifically was you know, a focus or an area, but maybe Deborah can confirm that. She's shaking her head. So I think just a few works happened to come in to the collection, maybe with a focus on who the artist was, but maybe sometimes just, for example, like a few of the works just through that subscription or membership to Members Prints that Sam would have been a member of.
Yeah, so now that I'm unmuted, that's exactly right. His interest was more in the artists, in accumulating specific artists within the collection. And I'm not aware of any particular interest in botanicals. And the subscription to the Society of Painter, Etchers, and Engravers, it's almost a, you know, it's a way to support artists, but not necessarily, those wouldn't be specifically botanicals every year.
Thanks, Deborah. Okay, so I don't know if anyone has any more remarks, but I'd love to take a moment here just to thank you all for joining in on your Friday morning. This will be posted up to RiverBrink's YouTube page, so we'll share it widely. But I wish you much success in your growing of gardens and exploring maybe in the artistic sense as well. But thank you so much for tuning in to this digital session of Coffee with the Curator.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.